Hello. Today I'm
Hello there,
talking
Jenny.
to Alejandro Rivas-Micoud. He is the founder and CEO of Userlytics. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jenny. Pleasure to be here.
So tell me a little bit about Userlytics. What is this company?
Userlytics is a remote user experience testing platform. So that's kind of a mouthful, but what it means is no matter what kind of industry you're in, what kind of organization you're in, user experience, how your users, how your customers, how your prospects experience your product, your services, your customer service, every touch point of your organization is perhaps the most critical aspect of success. And we help optimize that by allowing our clients to rapidly test their existing product, service, website, mobile app, landing page, etc., or prototypes and everything in between. And whether it's to uncover the why behind a known problem, like we know people are dropping off our conversion funnel at this point of our user journey, or trying to unearth unknown unknowns, like just exploring what pain points or unmet desires do my customers and my prospects and my users have. So that's what we do.
And is it for digital presence or also for hard products?
So the field itself, user experience testing and user research or usability testing, is something that can and should be applied to both physical products and digital products. But whereas it's very important with physical products, it's imperative with digital products. Mm-hmm. If you walk into a restaurant, you sit down, you're not comfortable, you don't like the atmosphere, the waiter, the food, whatever. You're already there, so it's, there's a certain amount of inertia for you to leave. If you visit a website or interacting with a mobile app that you don't like, you're gone in microseconds. So it's crucial to get it right with digital products, and most of our work is around digital user experience optimization.
So the platform that you've built, does it allow users to do that sort of user experience testing themselves, or do you provide a service along with the platform?
Either. So you can use the platform only, or most of the time you can use the platform and our panel of over 2.3 million participants around the world. And you might say, well, I make hair coloring products. So I want women in Germany, 18 to 35, who color their hair at least 5 times a year to go through this portal that I'm preparing or this prototype or whatever. So we will find those people for you, or people who use a certain type of accounting software within firms of a certain size, again, in a certain country. We'll find these people for you and have them go through the simulated user interaction journey as part of the test. And we can also, just to finish on to answer that question, if you'd like us to analyze and say, okay, what does this data mean? What should we do? Mm-hmm. And that's an optional service that we can provide also.
So that's really a very unique positioning. You not only have the expertise to analyze the information, you find the focus group, the large focus group of people based on the demographic or the target market of the customer.
Yes. And I just like to caveat that typically it's not a focus group, because a focus group, you have a group of people, 4 or 5 people. Typically it's one-on-one, and it might be what we call unmoderated, where there's no moderator. The participant follows a series of predefined tasks and instructions. Or we could be having one right now where it's in real time. And for example, you might be the participant, I'm the moderator, and I could have 25 other colleagues watching, but not visible to you, but interacting with me, saying, hey, ask Jenny why she said that, or can you ask her to do this, or, whatever. So you're not overwhelmed by seeing 25 faces looking at you, but we have 25 people actually observing what you're doing, as if it were kind of like an invisible mirrored wall, like focus groups, always did.
So how long has the company been in existence? When did you found the company?
We founded it in 2009, so a while ago.
So that was early, really early in the kind of the digital marketplace that we live in today.
Certainly. At that time, it was somewhat of an uphill struggle convincing organizations that they should do this, that there were kind of obvious reasons why they should, they could expand the geographical scope of where they got people. They could do it really fast and get results within hours and so on and so forth, much cheaper too. But then more or less around 2015, people caught on in the English-speaking markets, US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And then I think it was more or less around the year 2019, 20, 21, and the rest of the world started catching on, and it started growing quickly in those markets too.
And is your market international?
Totally. We have business customers in 39 countries, and wow, we've done complex projects, country studies in 79 countries.
Quite impressive.
Thank you.
So what brought you to found this company? What is your personal background? It's obviously a technology platform. How did you get to the point to have the idea, see the gap in the marketplace, and build this solution?
Well, a lot of founders will come up with some kind of origin myth about, I was sitting in a bar and all of a sudden I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had glasses to drink this beer with? And then I invented the glass and so on and so forth. I think most of the time that's not the case, and really things happen serendipitously. Certainly that was my case. I just do have a background in testing because I used to test nuclear power plants, and I used to design the test plan for critical systems in nuclear power plants.
Pretty critical area. Pretty critical area.
Yeah. But that was a long time ago. And so I had just finished selling off 2 companies in the telecom space that I founded. And after taking a break, I decided to get back into business, and I launched what I hoped would be a social media company. And it quickly became apparent to me that either I was going to have to plow in a lot more money than I was willing to invest, or it simply wasn't going to work. And so I brought the team together and said, hey guys, this isn't going to work. Do you have any ideas of what we should do for a living? I honestly didn't expect anything to come out of that, but I just thought it was a fair question to ask of everybody. And as it turned out, one of them came up with an idea, which was what became Userlytics. And, we explored it. We did a proof of concept and so on and so forth. And here we are. So I can't claim the merit of the idea or the ideation, because it was not much.
But the important thing is that you saw what you were doing wasn't working, or needed something else that you weren't willing to invest in at the time, and you pivoted and came up with something else. The tenacity and the drive, what kept you going at that point?
Yeah, it's a good question. We did go through what I like to call the 3 stages of startups. The first is, fun, joy, hope. We're doing this new thing, so on and so forth. And the second stage that almost every startup goes through is a journey through the valley of the shadow of death, and that is a very tough part of the journey, which in our case lasted 2 or 3 years. And you're right, you do need a lot of tenacity to get through that, and it's not easy. And then we got onto the third stage, growing fast, cash flow positive, so on and so forth. I think your question really touches an interesting topic, which is when you're starting a new venture and as you scale a new venture, there's a difficult balance to strike between tenacity, i.e. not giving up no matter what everybody says, no matter what, the market says, etc. And that can pay off because frequently the idea is not wrong. It's the timing that's off. Let's think about the iPad. The iPad was actually invented in 1996. It was called the Newton. And it was a failure because the context in which it was launched in terms of mobile bandwidth and screen and everything else, it just wasn't there. It wasn't ready. Then it became successful through the iPhone first, then the iPad. So that happens all the time. So tenacity is definitely important. But sometimes if you're too tenacious, you're just, going to be going off a cliff, and that's the end of your journey. So you do have to strike a balance there with knowing when to shift, when to pivot, or when to, just do a complete 180-degree turnaround.
Seth Godin wrote a book called The Dip, and the whole context is you have to understand, is this a dip and you're going to come up the other side? Or is it a cul-de-sac where you're just going around and you really need
Yes,
to close that door so another one can open?
exactly.
And that's the hard thing. It's hard to see it when you're in the middle of it and get through
Very
to the
hard.
other side.
It's very hard. And I don't think there's a science to that. And part of it is luck also,
True.
let's be honest.
Yep. The external factors that you can't control, the economy, all sorts of things like that.
Correct.
So let's talk about technology. So over a 19-year period since is that right, 19 years that you founded this company. And when did you say 2009?
2009. So, yeah, more like 16.
16.
But
Technology has changed a lot over those years. So how have you kept up with the changes in technology, reinvented the way the platform works? Talk a little bit about how the changes in technology have impacted your business model.
Sure. Well, the first major technological shift was the explosion in mobile, because when we launched, we were desktop 100%. So we had to adapt and really expand, because it's not like desktops disappeared or laptops disappeared. So it just meant different screens that we had to be able to do the same thing that we were doing. So as a small startup with constrained resources at the beginning, coming up with a separate app for the iPhone and a separate app for Android was a bridge too far. And what we decided was, okay, we'll just hack our way out of trouble by leveraging a capability of broadcasting the screen of a phone onto a desktop. So in other words, we would ask our participants, and I'm talking here about the years 2010, 11, 12, thereabouts, asking participants to project the screen of their device onto a desktop and interact with it, and we would be recording with our platform the desktop screen, which would be capturing thus the projected screen of the mobile. So that's how we got around that, while we came to a scale that would permit us to actually dedicate the resources to develop our own iPhone app and our own Android app, which, by the way, was technically more challenging than the desktop app for a number of reasons. But yeah, we did that, and we multi-screen for many, 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 many years since then. Now, well, late 22, as you know, large learning models exploded onto the scene in terms of AI. And we quickly, because we had been thinking about AI for a long time, for like 3 or 4 years at that point, and had been dipping our toes into the water trying to come up with a solution. And then all of a sudden, OpenAI appeared on the scene, as it were, and we dropped what we were doing internally, developed an API, and launched a product based on that API with OpenAI in April of 23. Since that time, we've been iterating and improving that particular product, but we have been analyzing AI as, okay, what is this going to do to us? Is this going to be a fantastic opportunity for us? Is it going to blow us out of the water? Is it going to be both? What does it mean for us? And we came to the conclusion that in our particular industry, clients would definitely welcome the improvements that AI could bring in terms of efficiency and efficacy, but they would not want to rely 100% for their user experience insights on AI-generated insights. It's something that can work very well if a UX designer wants a quick, okay, out of these 5 or 10 designs, which direction should I be heading? And asking AI through synthetic personas or through real people, but an AI moderator, to come up with an answer to that. But if they're going to be launching a product or a service that might be 100 million or 1,000 million or many times larger than that, they're not going to do it based on the AI alone. Impossible. So what we think is the true value is having a combination of human-generated insights and AI-generated insights, and mixing and matching both. So that's what we've been focusing on, and we're rolling out at an increasingly fast pace different capabilities to enable that.
So you're looking at AI more as a tool and an enabler for your platform, as opposed to something that's going to replace what you do.
Yes, absolutely. There are certain areas where it's very impactful, minimizing the time spent by our clients in analyzing the data that our platform produces and coming to conclusions. That's a tremendous game changer for our clients. In some cases, also substituting human participants with synthetic personas. Like I said, it depends on the moment and what you're trying to do and how important the end result is, if you want to do that only, or you want to have both 5 or 10 human participants and 100 or 200 human participants with AI moderator, or or synthetic users, or what have you. So there are different combinations there. But we think clients, what they really appreciate is having the flexibility to just mix and match as needed.
Interesting. So what do you see for your company as you go forward in the next year or two? I'm not going to say 5 years because that's such a huge horizon, but what are you most excited about in the coming year or so?
Yeah, most excited about all these improvements, AI-related improvements especially, that we are launching this year and early next year. That's what excites us most. On a second level of excitement, if you will, AI is going to solve not just these things that I just mentioned, but also international hurdles. Imagine that you're trying to run a study with a certain segment of the Chinese speaking population in Malaya. Right now, if you want to do that, you have to, if you're going to be moderating it, you have to have a Chinese speaking moderator, and then somebody to listen to the recordings or the data, and and so on and so forth. AI is going to enable us to kind of short circuit a lot of those hurdles in expense and in time. And so I think that's very exciting because it just brings our world a little bit closer together in terms of internationalization.
What advice, you're a successful serial entrepreneur and have been in it for the long run. What advice would you give someone considering stepping off on their own and starting a company?
Well, first of all, think about it very carefully, because it's not an easy thing to do. And, in the press, we all read about the successes, but I seldom read about the failures in the press. And those are the vast majority. So think about it carefully. Ideally, have experience under your belt working at, whether it's a startup or a large company or both, before you go into it. I read somewhere recently that people in their early 50s were one of the most successful age cohorts in terms of entrepreneurs segmented by age, which goes against the grain of what we all are led to believe by, when we read the press. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is, okay, you've decided you want to do this. Now, many people who jump into this, they envision getting VC funding as almost the objective. And that's not at all the objective. In fact, in my view, it should be your last port of call funding-wise. Because, VCs, nothing, I don't want to speak badly about them. They're great. They serve a vital function. But at the end of the day, they're looking for returns, X, 20X, X. If you translate that, that means that they're the equivalent of loan sharks in terms of their expected return. So if you went to a bank and they turned you down, and then you went to somebody and said, don't worry, I'll lend you at, 1,000%, 2,000%, 3,000%, you'd run for the hills, and rightfully so. So nothing wrong with that, by the way. Like I said, they're risking a lot, and so they expect a high return in exchange. Now, one thing people forget to ask themselves is, why not think about our clients as sources of funding? And what I mean by that is, if you would be willing to accept a bank loan at, say, a 10 to 20% interest, would you be willing to sell to your client in exchange for an advance over the first year at a loss of 10 to 20%? Because there's not much of a difference there financially. But that really can change the equation. If you think about a supermarket, when we walk into a supermarket, like a Costco, and we pay cash or the equivalent, that entity then pays its suppliers 30 or 60 or 90 days later. It's a bank. That is what a supermarket is, in a sense. Now, most of the time, working capital is a drag on businesses as they scale, because the more they grow and the faster they grow, the more you need to finance your inventory, your accounts receivable, etc. But if you change the equation such that your customers are paying you in advance, then if you can create negative working capital, your clients become a source of funding. So anyway, my point is, by all means, go to VCs, etc., but make it your last point of call. That's a piece of advice I would give.
So it's really understanding cash flow and looking at creative ways of funding the company, financing the company without having to give away control and huge upside profits in the future. It's great.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. I
Thank you.
wish the best for you and Userlytics in the future. Where can people find you? What's the URL for Userlytics?
Sure. www.userlytics.com. So that's userlytics.com.
We see it in your background there. So that's great. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best and success in the future.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Cheers.